Stop trying so hard. I think this is a concept that uh, I personally kind of came across. I don't think I've really seen this discussed as much. In my last couple of videos, it's been kind of talked about trying your best. Just stay within the mission, um, and just overall do the best you can. But I think that can slowly spiral down to something like trying very hard. And what I mean by that is being extremely results driven. So let me give you some context. When you're playing a video game, say for example, I'm playing a video game, it can be any sort of competitive game, Apex Legends, Overwatch, League of Legends, you pick your poison, right? But when you're playing a competitive game, you ideally want to try your hardest, right? And you want to do the best that you possibly can. I think a majority of competitive players, such as myself, I think we want to try our best. Um, but I think there is too much of that one thing. There is too much. There can be too much of trying your best. And what I mean by that is you can essentially put too much pressure on yourself, right? It can evolve from trying your best to I have to win and I have to get this exact result, or else everything that I've done is a complete waste of time. So, going on this sort of topic of trying so hard, it's not a bad thing to try hard. I don't want you guys to walk away from this video thinking that I'm telling you to just be a lazy bum. That's that's definitely not the message I want to put out there. But I think if you are in the mindset of trying extremely hard and being extremely results driven, that can cause a little bit of internal friction. And what I mean by that is when you're extremely results driven, when you're setting these high expectations for yourself, you can actually fall 10 times worse and 10 times harder than compared to if you trusted the process, focused on the process, and did the best you could in terms of what variables you can control, what you can fix, what you can reflect on, what you can better, instead of being in this sort of tunnel vision state of mind of, okay, I failed, everything that I did was for nothing, but then, just like your favorite competitive game, you just keep requeuing and you never truly reflect on what went wrong. So, what I mean by don't try so hard, I mean to take a step back. Um, Try not to put so much pressure on yourself. And this can be for anything, it does not have to be specifically for a video game. It can be for life. You know, say, for example, we take a situation that I'm currently in, which is, trying hard to get into quant. Um, it's a lot of work. It is. And to be honest with you, I haven't exactly been keeping up with the schedule of, studying my math and doing my coding and doing my leak code and reading my books and all that stuff. But that's just a lack of discipline. And I think it can also stem from a lack of motivation. I myself have been kind of reflecting and looking back towards it and the amount of hours that I poured into Khan Academy videos, into YouTube videos on how to do this and how to do that in Python, and watching these 15-hour lectures of how the basics of computer science and all this stuff. And I think when you put that much pressure on yourself, especially something that I did where I was just spending hours upon hours on top of all the work that I was already doing at my full-time job, it can burn you out really quickly. And it's because I was in this mindset of I have to try hard. I have to absolutely get this result. I have to do the absolute best that I can. Um, but when I say the absolute best that I can, I mean that I have to get that result no matter what. And I have to do it within a certain amount of months, and that's it. That's all I have. Without really taking some step back and thinking, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? Am I giving myself enough time? Um, am I still passionate for what I want to do? You know, it's a lot of these things that I think comes with reflection, something that I struggle with personally. And I try to practice what I preach. But I think, if you're out there working on something and you've kind of lost sight because you've tried so hard and you're so results driven that you haven't really enjoyed the process and you haven't really kind of taken a step back and maybe thought to yourself, is there a better way of doing this? Maybe I don't have to focus on studying a 15-hour CS lecture. Maybe I don't have to spend thousands and thousands of hours just, brute forcing math into my head. I think the tunnel vision of trying so hard can quickly devolve us. It can actually hinder our learning, and I think that's something that is very important, especially when you're in college. I think I kind of came across this myself in college. So if you're out there, if you're learning, if you are doing something that you know you truly want to get to a certain point B, from point A to point B, you really want to get to that end point, but maybe you've kind of found yourself in that sort of tunnel vision. You just didn't realize it until you took a step back and found out, wait a minute, um, I'm doing this completely wrong and I'm just brute forcing myself through this journey without truly enjoying what I'm doing and enjoying the process and actually learning, not just checking off a box and moving on. I think that's something that's important in our lives, especially with how fast paced our lives are, with everything that's going on. It can be extremely difficult to get out of that sort of mindset, and I think that kind of harps upon the same point that I made in my last video about being in a rat race. You know, um, really, it's a double edged sword. You can be in a rat race, but you can also want something particularly and try too hard for it to the point where you burn out. Um, you make bad decisions. You end up not really learning that much, and that's when it truly becomes a waste of time, in my opinion. So, anyways, again, this is something that I guess is kind of based off of my own experience. I'm not sure how general this can really be to everybody. Uh, for me specifically, I'm coming across a sort of situation where I'm trying to jam pack so much information into my head. I'm reviewing math. I'm going over coding. I bought myself a couple of books actually for Python, object-oriented programming and such, and just kind of, very education, very growth mindset like. But I think recently I found myself kind of being a little bit burnt out. And admittedly, I tried very hard because I just spent so much time, uh, trying to cram this one thing, trying to check this one box, and it ended up kind of hindering myself. I burnt out. I felt like, kind of looking back at it, that I didn't really learn as much as I would like to, and I could maybe even argue that I wasted my time. Um, so I think taking a step back and trying not to force yourself to do some things and really enjoying the process and not being results driven, um, can really help, in my opinion. And I think this is kind of a revelation that, I wouldn't say it's really a revelation. I think this is something that I've always kind of preached slash tried to follow. But in the in the current age of comparison and trying to achieve goals in such a short amount of time. I think I kind of lost sight of that. Um, so yeah, my point is that don't try so hard. It's good to try hard, but don't do it to the point where you have completely lost the plot. Uh, and just try not to burn yourself out. Balance is key, I think, is the message, the main message that I want to get out here. So, anyways, bit of a short one. Um, if you got something from this video, let me know. I'm always willing to have discussions in the comments as well. So if you have your own take on it, maybe you want to expand a little bit, let me know. But all right, see you guys. See you guys soon.